There we go. All right. Get settled here. Find my water. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit this morning, hopefully to give you some thoughts, to take to lunch, have some conversations. I don't know that I'm going to solidify anything for you, but hopefully force you to begin to think maybe differently about a few things. First, who am I? If you follow me on Twitter, these are some of the hashtags I use. Father of 5, play a lot of soccer, love to duck hunt. And those are really my passions. Governor asked me, what have you been up to? And I said, well, chasing kids and trying to get ready for duck season. And then I work. I do have to pay for that stuff. I want to start here. This guy's name is Shelby Johnson. And I worked with Shelby for about 11 years. In this location here is Arkansas Geographic Information Office. Shelby is a director of GIS in the state of Arkansas. And was fortunate enough to work with them and do a lot of what I think are really great things. But Shelby really kind of molded the way I thought about technology and opportunities. And so bear with me for a minute with a couple stories. About 11 months into my working with Shelby, this is back in the latter part of 2000, he said, hey, man, I need you to generate this Access database, and you need all these list domains, and you got to have, all these linkages, blah, 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 blah. And I just looked at him and was like, I don't know how to do that. And he very unkindly rolled back to the bookshelf. We had bookshelves back then. And grabbed a book that was Access like 97 or something and threw it at me and said, well, learn it. For those of you that are kids, and I'm not that old, but you couldn't just Google everything back then. You had to actually get a book and read it and learn how to do stuff. And it made an impression on me because he was not going to accept, I don't know how to do that. It was I don't care if you know how to do it, figure it out. And that really has driven me and stuck with me through the years. The other example, within about 2 or 3 weeks of that, and you can tell he's had lasting impressions on me, because this guy is the most laid-back guy you'll ever meet, and these are like the 2 times that he kind of yelled at me a little bit. I mean, I kind of hurt my feeling. And in this case, he said, hey, I want you to go figure out how to, we were trying to purchase something. I don't even remember the exact details. But he said, hey, I know it was a bureaucratic process. That's what I remember. And he said, go figure this out and come back to me and let's talk about how we're going to get this accomplished. So I went off, did my due diligence, came back a few days later and said, hey, we can't do that. And he just looked at me. And we shared this office, which was pretty comical because he's left-handed, I'm right-handed. And so we had this little divider and literally our elbows touched, as we were working. And he rolls over, he slams the door, and he said, is there a law that says you can't do this? And I was like, no, but I talked to the people over here and these people over here, and they all said, you can't really do that. I want the law. Go find me in Arkansas Code where it says we can't do this, and come back to me. And that really made a lasting impression on me because it tore down the wall or the idea that you can't do it just because nobody else has ever done it or because, the director of state procurement said you couldn't do it. It didn't matter. What's the law? Why can we not do it? Is it a function of there's a real reason that you can't do that because it's against the law and you'll go to jail, which I would not do well in jail, so I didn't want to do that. So is it a function of that, or is it a function of you're dealing with bureaucrats in a system, which for me was state government, that says you can't do that just because that's not what you do? Interestingly enough, after pushing, prodding, jamming, screaming, hollering, we accomplished what we were trying to do because there was no law. We weren't going to go to jail. In fact, it was a function of nobody just really ever done it that way. And so those 2 stories really shaped kind of where I've gone with, my attitude, my focus, my career in information technology as much as, GIS specifically. So today I want to talk about where we're going and who we is, as I would say back home. So who are we? I know this sounds boring, but you're going to love it. We're going to talk about procurement for a minute. So procurement is a nasty word. How many of you have had to procure something? Raise your hands. Come on, don't be shy. It's painful, right? Is anybody in here say, this is an easy process and I love it and I want to procure something every day? Anybody? Okay, yeah. So you've obviously procured stuff. A good buddy of mine, anybody know Mike Byrne? FCC, GIO. So Mike and I have been buddies for, I don't know how long, quite some time. And he had this quote that was picked up by FCW. It said, procurement is a silent killer of innovation. So I want you to think about that for a minute. See, what procurement does is it really stalls the process. But we don't think about how we really got here. I mean, why is procurement such a pain? So I want to take you back to the 1950s. In the 1950s, we were building rocket ships and doing really interesting stuff like sending people to space, trying to build planes to fly people across countries, and we were building an interstate network across the U.S. Those are what I would call big projects, right? And so with these great feats came these really complex architectural diagrams and workflows and catch-alls and how do we identify the needs and write the proposals and get the PMs and those kinds of things. We took this concept moving on into the 90s and we began building these nice little data centers and building these really complex diagrams, which I don't expect you to look at, that would manage all of this, right? Because we're still, even though we're dealing now with bits and bytes, we're still trying to manage it like an infrastructure type effort, like building a road all the way across the U.S. And I think we all, I'm looking at your face, I think you're kind of seeing the analogy here of there's a little bit of a difference in procuring a server and trying to build a road that stretches across the United States. Yes, okay, I'm getting some head nods. So now what happens is the boss comes in, all right? So we've got this procurement here, and we've got this process, and the boss comes in. The boss says, hey, I need something, and we cry. Because we immediately know, go back to my story, we immediately go, yeah, we can't really do that. And the boss goes, yeah, I don't care. And so we cry. And it's this cycle, right, of continually disappointing because we're in this cycle of that's really hard to do because we have this bureaucratic procurement process. So the contributing factors, the procurement was designed to build stuff, and I would expand it to say like really big, large, multi-year efforts. We got these management structures. You guys are familiar with the project management structure and what all of that entails. And I'm not suggesting that any of these are bad. Just think about them in context of how they were developed. And then you got these schedules, because everybody needs a schedule. And schedules typically thought of in this context are spread out over some significant calendar, like years, because we're building roads all the way across the U.S. or putting spaceships into space. And so those are really, really big efforts. So this slide kind of summarizes, where things came from, how we kind of started to get there. And then I say the 2010s, if that's a word, we began to think about it a little bit differently. And when I say we, I think that we is probably more outside of government and more of the entrepreneurs. And how could we really tackle and get from A to B much, much faster? So don't think in terms of schedules that have years, think in terms of schedules that have days or hours. And what does that really look like? And that's kind of scary to everybody in the room. I mean, can you imagine doing something that was going live and doing it within days or hours? That's kind of unique. Not to say you can't, because I know all of you can. So why does procurement matter? Well, traditionally, it's been the start of all these processes. You have to start with procuring something. It's it's kind of rolled into, and I would say even been misused to a degree from the standpoint of it's been used to drive technology in some cases. And then traditionally, from my perspective and my knowledge, it's delayed progress in a number of instances, because by the time, I want to ask you to raise your hands because I don't want you to get in trouble with your boss, but how many times have you gone and you had to go through the whole procurement process, and by the time you got done and got it procured, the whole stinking technology had changed, and you really wanted something different than what you started out to procure? And so you guys, I'm getting the head nod. So, and from that standpoint, it becomes this barrier, right? It's like banging your head on this brick wall. So let's move this into software and applications a bit. Take a minute and read this, because I don't want to read it to you. I'm going to get a drink of water here. This is kind of the process when we think about software. Not always, because we know there's a number of different ways to get at software, but the last 4 bullets are really interesting. You know, if you go out and you procure services to get software, in many cases, you know, you manage building implementation, you provide support, you pay for more building and maintenance, then you deem it obsolete, you bury it and start over again. You guys ever been through that process? Yes? Yeah. And so it's like, that's stupid, and not really a really good use of taxpayer dollars, which I know all of us want to be very aware of. So we're back to the boss. Boss comes in and says, hey, my boss wants to know, or wants an application that says, what day is recycle pickup on? You guys have built this application before, haven't you? So, because you guys do recycling in Wyoming? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Yes? Okay. I was going to report you if you didn't, because we recycle in Arkansas as well. It's probably a different kind, but we recycle. But you never can remember what day, right? At least I can't ever remember. Because then you have a holiday, and then everything shifts, and then they're going to skip, and so it's like, what day does this really ever happen? So think for a minute, real quick, in your head, how would I build this application? Got it? How are you going to build this application and get it online? Clock's ticking. This is what some of you thought of, and it's okay, don't be embarrassed. You got a PDF in your head. There was a thematic map with some nasty, funky colors, and it had Monday through Friday, each with a different color. And it's okay. I mean, I've been there, and this is not uncommon. This is a real map. I won't tell you where. What if you had a search box that said, what day is my trash pickup? And you type in, what day is my trash pickup? And it says Tuesday, because isn't that the real answer? I mean, if I go and I ask the question, what day is my trash pickup, I don't want a map. I want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's the answer I'm looking for. And a map does nothing for me, really. Or it might. I mean, you could have a map there that really asks the question, is this the correct location? Do you want to change the location? So all the map really does in this case is verify. I only use this example to illustrate that oftentimes, as geographers, GIS nerds, whatever we want to call ourselves, we immediately jump to this map is going to answer whatever question is asked. And that's really kind of silly. So we have to think about who the client, for lack of a better term, is. What's the question they're answering, and how do we answer that question the way they need it answered? Now, I'll back up. There's definitely a mapping component here, right? As they type in their address on the back end, we should have some geo service that's bouncing against some known list of dates for pickups in certain locations, and is probably doing some point and polygon analysis that then returns Tuesday. So it's not that the analysis wasn't required to get to the answer, but what's the answer we provide? All right. Water break. All right. Sidebar. So totally cutting off on a sidebar for a minute. This is a URL that you guys should go check out. And there was a whole series that Brian Timoney did on basically kind of why all of our web maps suck. But my favorite is the tyranny of requirements, because let's be honest, we love to make requirements lists that go from like, you know, a page to 25 pages, and I've literally seen 25 pages worth of requirements before for a web app, which is insane, because at the end of the day, You want it fast, intuitive, informative, and fast. I mean, that's really the requirements. Are there any other requirements? Because if it's not fast, intuitive, informative, fast, then who cares? So at this point, I will ask you, and again, you don't have to raise your hand. If you want to, you can. How many of you use the web application that you've stood up? Like, you use it every day. You've built a web application, and you use it personally every day. So there's a few hands. That's good. I like that. That's positive. I asked the same question to a couple of other, and nobody raised their hand. I actually asked a question in a room of about 500 people, and I was like, be honest with me. You really use your web application every day to do something? Nobody. And that's kind of sad. I mean, like, why did you spend the time if you're not even going to use it? Who are you hoping to support with that? So this is a really interesting one. The other one, and hey, don't get down on yourselves because I've made some funky, nasty, ugly web apps, all right? So I'm speaking to myself as much as you guys, so I'm not trying to slam anybody here other than myself. But this comes from MapThis, and this is the 6 reasons the public hates your web mapping application. And I think there's so much truth to this. It's slow, okay? And we're kind of getting over that because there's a whole lot of ways to get over the slow aspect. It's ugly. Okay, going from desktop to web, you got to be aware of a bunch of different stuff, right? You got to take it into account because you can make some really ugly stuff on the web. You can't print. Hey, guess what? People still like to print. I mean, and you got to have the print function. Whether, we can argue about we're in 2013 now and we shouldn't print stuff anymore and it's bad for the environment, but you still got to print. And then mobile friendly, which, the governor touched on for a minute. Number 5 is interesting to me. I can't figure it out in 5 seconds. I love the fact that we, and I'll put myself in this category, we do 2 things. The first thing we do is we throw up the splash screen, which is the disclaimer, which if anybody ever read the disclaimer, it basically says, we're really sorry if this sucks, and we're not responsible for any decisions made off of it. I mean, if anybody ever read that, they probably should just close it and move on because, and we've all got that disclaimer because it makes legal feel better. And then after we get past the disclaimer, right, then we've got the help really big because this thing is so complex. You've got to have a help that explains how to use it. That probably isn't really inviting to users, so it's kind of interesting. All right. Mobile, I will throw this on the screen because I think this really illustrates where we've come from. This is just between 2005 and 2013. If I'm not mistaken, this was from an event as the Pope was being announced and the smoke has come up and all of that. And the quote is, in just 8 years, mobile devices become ubiquitous. Everybody carries the internet in their pocket. That's kind of important. Not so much because there's really 2 kinds of accessibility when you think about mobile. There's, it works on mobile devices, and there's it works on various screen sizes, right? There's a lot of things that work on my iPhone because Safari can handle it, but they're unusable because of the real estate on the screen. No, there was no thought given. This is fascinating to me, though, just the number of devices there. Data, not that guy, but real data. So what we've done over the last umpteen jillion years is we've created, updated, maintained, created data, right? And that's not me because I could never grow a beard, but I did start out on a heads-up digitize board, backlit, actually, so I was hot stuff. Had the backlit. Those things make great coffee tables or stand-up desks now. So if anybody's got one, I'm interested because they go up and down. You do? Sweet! I want it. I got to figure out how to get it to Arkansas. All right. Because they make a great stand-up desk. Simultaneously, while all of us were creating all of this data, man, that's washed out and nasty. So I'll tell you what it is. You've got ArcGIS.com, Bing, Google Maps, and OpenStreetMap. All of these people have been creating data as well in some form or fashion. Some of them have been using some of the data you've been creating. Others have been creating their own. Anyway, the short of the story is that we're like drowning in data, but we're starving for information. We've got data, okay? And I know you want to develop more data, you want to enhance data, you want to make data better. I get it. Been there. Supporting a number of efforts that are doing that. But what are we really doing with the data? I mean, making data for data's sake is drowning. And it's kind of sad because the power of the data is actually doing something with it, some type of analytic that solves some problem, that supports some business solution, that really drives home why it's important we have a job. I mean, when budgets get tight, I can assure you, because I've been through the budget process a bunch of times, at the state, at the local, and even at the federal level, when budgets get tight, I need new orthos is not high on the list. It's not real high on the list. I need to maintain road center lines, not high on the list. Yeah, we've got all kinds of reasons why it's important to support 911 or school zoning issues or environment. Great, but what's the analysis that's being done with those things that support it? And that's where we really have to focus because we're drowning in this data. So my kids, I mentioned I have 5. They range in ages from, hang on. Hey, if you had 5, you wouldn't remember either. 10 to 16, that's it. 10 to 16. And so I'm convinced that one day they're going to say, hey, back in the old days, did anybody really do anything with all that data? I mean, I'm convinced that at some point they're going to be like, they're going to figure out what I really do in the community I work in. And because they kind of have an idea, but at some point they're going to be like, what did y'all do? Y'all just like drew stuff all the time? I mean, you know, so what? So have we become, this is just a question, I don't have an answer, but I think it's one worth pondering. Have we become so obsessed with data that we fail to make any use of it? I could argue yes in several instances, but I think it's a valuable question to ask ourselves. So there's this real interesting interconnection as we think about things moving forward, and the interconnection between the software, hardware infrastructure, the data, and the procurement process, and there's like this sweet spot that's beginning to occur, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of new technology begin to leverage the common buzzword, location-based services, or GIS data in the background. And, you know, I put up some fun stuff here, but this really kind of isn't future because it's all being done in some form or fashion, whether it's in DOD or in research labs, et cetera. And the bottom, this is my favorite, you know, this bottom one here in the middle, which is like the intelligent kitchen. You know, with 5 kids, things run out, and for whatever reason, nobody ever tells you until you go to get it and you realize it's out. But I want my milk to, like, send me an email saying, pick up milk on the way home, right? That's what I want. You're out of orange juice. If you want it in the morning, pick some up. I want my refrigerator to do that for me. I want it to send me that grocery list. And it's totally possible, and it's being done. I'm just not rich enough to afford it yet. But it's coming. But there's this sweet spot where I think there's a number of people probably outside of our traditional GIS community have said it's too hard to buy, it's too costly to build, and it's too boring to create, in reference to data or hardware or software. And so they're beginning to do interesting things. I'm just throwing this on the screen because it's a cute little puppy. But dog fooding is a really interesting concept to me and something that we have not done traditionally very well. Obviously, there's people in this room, but it ties to using your application that you're building, like actually using what you're developing. Because what you'll find is that the more you use it, the better it gets. And what I find is that, you know, across the landscape, the less people are using it, the more it sucks because nobody cares. And I have a lot more invested in it if I'm actually using it. All right, moving on. So those of you with buzzword bingo cards, I know you've got them out there. Go ahead. You know, these are the popular buzzwords of the day, so I want to make sure I get a slide on those. Okay, done. What if we focused on the problem? So what if we said software, procurement, hardware, all of that is easy. We can do it in a number of different ways through cloud services, platform as a service, software as a service. something as a service. So we can take care of all that. That's not a big deal anymore. What would be the problems we really started trying to focus on? The problems will we really start trying to solve? What are those problems that, look, in my office we had a rule because we were building back to Shelby. We were building statewide road center lines. We were building statewide parcels. We were building statewide addresses. We were doing it in conjunction with 75 counties. We were training, we were integrating, we were coordinating. We actually weren't doing data development. All we were doing was integrating, publishing, those kinds of things. And what you find out is data is like really nasty and dirty, right? 75 different entities, integrating, publishing out. So we had like this 80% rule. If it's 80% good enough, push it. And that really drove some people in our office crazy because they were like OCD and really anal retentive and they wanted 100%. But the longer we held on to it, the less valuable it became. And when we started really using that 80% rule and pushing things, we could really start solving some problems, cleaning up the data for one, but also utilizing the data to support things like online streamlined sales taxation, which is the online sales tax, which brings back millions of dollars to the state. That's like solving a real problem. Was the data 100% correct? No. It was 80% correct. I'll give you another example. Medicare and Medicaid fraud. You guys are familiar? Yeah, Medicare and Medicaid, right? So fraud happens all across the country every day in those two areas. If you were like 20%, if you could just figure that out from a 20% perspective, you're saving billions of dollars, right? So get over the 100% accuracy, 100% precision, and all that. Sometimes 80% is good enough, and so you got to recognize that. What problems will we start solving? These are my two girls. So I really screwed up. I booked a keynote over spring break, and they were pissed. And so the keynote was in Maryland, and so in order to bring, when you've got girls, so you've got the wife that you got to make sure you keep happy, and then you got them, because all of them can make your life just not fun. And so I said, hey, girls, let's load up and go to D.C. So y'all just go with me. We'll do the keynote, and then we'll just go tour D.C. So that worked. That was awesome. We're on the plane. I've been going to D.C. for probably 15 years. Any of y'all get confused by the metro? Anybody want to admit to that? You do? Really? You shouldn't. What? Okay. So those of you that have been to D.C., I'm an avid outdoorsman, hunt all the time. I can tell you some of the hardest places to navigate through is flooded timber because it all looks the same. I'm on it. I can do it. No problem. Put me underground at the metro, I'm lost. And why on earth they can't put north, south, east, and west signs up, I have no idea. But they can't. I mean, it's like against the law somewhere, I'm sure. So we're going to D.C., and the girls are like, do we know where we're going or what we're going to do? And I was like, yeah, I'll figure it out. We're going to get on the metro. I'm not sure which way we're going. All this. So this is just to illustrate how a 10 and 13-year-old girl think in this age. D.C. Metro, they know we're going there. They know Dad always kind of grumbles because he gets lost in D.C. Metro. Before we even get to D.C. Metro, my oldest daughter has the app downloaded and is like, is this the app? Yeah, that's the one. Where'd you get that? Well, I just typed in D.C. Metro, the App Store. It's free. Download it. Okay. So I'm like downloading it. Before I may even get done downloading it, she's like, now where are we going to be at? And I forgot what stop it was. I was like, we're going to be here. And where are we going? We're going to the Capitol. Okay, what we got to do is get on the blue and then jump over to the red and 4 stops later. And it's estimating about 25 minutes. But if you take the orange, wealth of information. She's just like spewing it. This is how she thinks. This is how she solves problems. This is how many of you solve problems. But is this how we as a community think about solving problems? And it's not just that. I was sharing with somebody earlier, maybe it was last night, we were talking about, what age do you get your kids' cell phones? My 10-year-old does not have a cell phone. She's not happy about it, okay? I'm the worst parent on planet Earth, which makes me, I think I'm doing a pretty good job then. I mean, if you ever get that phrase, you're the worst parent ever, I think that's like a compliment. So, what she does have is an iPad that she has Skype on and Instagram, and she knows where every open Wi-Fi network is in our town. So she kind of has a phone, and it's, in her mind, it's like, and she communicates fine. Which brings me back to my 13, 16-year-old, which is like, why do you guys need phones exactly? Because, So it's just this interesting way or thought process, and I don't think my kids are unique. I think that's pretty much the norm. The way that kids solve problems and begin to think about solving problems in communication and applications and those kinds of things. What problems will we solve? June 13th, 2013, anybody know what happened? I'll give you a hint. It was a nice day in Laramie. Sun was shining. Anybody know what happened on June 13th? This is a hashtag if anybody wants to hit Twitter real quick, just that fast. You guys familiar with GitHub? Yep. Okay. Social coding interaction. Heard about it? So June 13th, GitHub enabled mapping of GeoJSON. That probably doesn't mean a whole lot to many of you here in the office, but it definitely opens up some really interesting things from a infrastructure support. Remember I was talking about procurement, infrastructure, software, okay? If all I want to do is make a map that meets 80%, I can actually do it now by creating a GitHub account. That's kind of useful, right? For those of you that are familiar, there are some limitations. For this audience, file size, I don't know what it is. Does it take 10 megs, maybe? Something like that. It's small, 10 megs. And then, the other argument is, well, it doesn't do analytics, okay? So I'll throw this back at you and say, how many web applications are you developing that require just like a ton of analytics? I mean, most of the time we're just conveying some information. So think about that 80% rule. Is GitHub an interesting solution to get the map? It's totally interactive, embedded in whatever site you want, all that kind of fun stuff. Why I got giddy, and I seriously got giddy about the announcement. If you were following me on Twitter, I was like, this is really cool. Why is it really cool? For all of its limitations, think about it from this standpoint. It's a social coding platform, GitHub. I don't know how many. I'm not even going to guess. Some infinite number of developers that write code are participating and sharing code in a common place that's generally open for others to use. And it meets the 80% limitations. So my prediction is that some of the limitations I talked about earlier, which are the file size and whatever the other one was that you come up with, I think they're going to be analytics. They're going to be overcome with time. Because one of these developers is going to go, I really need a tool that does X. They're going to develop that tool, and they're going to publish that tool, and then you're going to get to use that tool. That's kind of interesting. So I'm giddy about it. The other interesting thing to me is that, I've been storing, updating, archiving, and doing all of that kind of stuff with data for a long time. You can do all of it within this platform, and that's kind of interesting. And how... I'm not saying it's the solution for everything, so don't misquote me and walk out here and say, Learon said GitHub solves all the world's problems. No, it doesn't. But it's interesting to me to see the development of how these things are coming together. So Ben Balter, who works for GitHub, he threw this out there, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's an open letter to government CIOs, and it talks about lean, iterative, decentralized, and open. You can go read it on the blog post. These slides will be posted on my SlideShare probably sometime after lunch, so you don't have to write down the URLs. National Broadband Map, I mentioned Mike Burns, a buddy of mine. He's got like a ton of fascinating facts from his use case on National Broadband Map, but this is one that was kind of interesting. So they have this API that monitors number of hits or inserts over time, and it uses MongoDB, which is an open source database. Don't ask me a lot more about it. But it's collected 146 million inserts in 2 years. They've restarted it one time. 0 software upgrades, 0 patches, 0 maintenance. I don't know about you, but if I compare that I'll speak for myself. If I compare that to my hardware, software infrastructure and how many times I restart things that just monitor, it's not that good. So the future, the list of cool stuff, that ESRI is doing, open source is doing, projects, aerial photography, LiDAR, satellite imagery. I mean, the list is long, and there's certainly a lot of cool things, startup and fast companies. The list is very, very long in what I would call the cool stuff and the useful stuff. So what I would want to leave you with is a takeaway that there's just the number of tools to do particular jobs is like infinite. I mean, it's like N. There's so many different ways to solve problems, and that there is this path of least resistance. And so going back to the words of Shelby, and when he says, is there a law against it? What do you mean you can't? You've got to consider what all these viable options are. So I'll leave you with this. About 6 months ago, you guys seen this yet? Nobody? Okay, cool. Nobody looked at my SlideShare account for them. That's good. So 6 months ago, Mike and I are at a conference, and it's late at night, and we're just kind of screwing around, and it's like, hey, did you see where the White House released all these PDFs related to sequester and the impacts on each state? It's like, yeah. Where's the map? I mean, because in this case, you kind of did need a map to understand how all the numbers work together. So we just kind of started screwing around. This is an example from the PDF. It's a 6-page PDF per state that has a bunch of text in there. So that's pretty painful when you think about a data entry, right? So there's 6-page PDF for every state. Each state's its own hyperlink, and it's got numbers embedded. So at that point, it's like midnight. We're kind of cussing a little bit. I mean, just a little, because this is. But what we began to realize is that it was very, there was a nice little template there, and so you could begin to see where the numbers were and quickly pull them out. So this is an example from Arkansas: teachers in schools, 5.9 million; education, children, disabilities, 5.6 million, so on and so forth. You get the idea. So we developed a Google spreadsheet, and I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, but I'm a pretty good data monkey. So he read numbers and I typed. And so over the course of, I don't know, sometime around 2 o'clock, we were like, this is stupid, going to bed. But then the next day, we're sitting in the conference listening, of course, because you want to listen to the speakers, and we're also typing on our laptops. And so we got all the data entered. So now it's in a Google spreadsheet. And then you can go read this. This is listed at his account there. But then he did all this whiz-bang cool stuff. Converting to CSV, sticking in PostgreSQL database, used a couple of repos, blah, 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 blah. And the result was a GeoJSON file that got published out a couple of different ways. So there's this Mapbox visualization on Mapbox. I think it's the one. Sorry, I didn't look very good on screen. I think it's the bottom one. And then somebody else picked it up, because this is all done in GitHub. Somebody else immediately picked it up. And they did one using D3. Chris Helm, who some of you may know, ESRI dude, picked it up, did something with ArcGIS on mine, or arcgis.com. And so what was interesting was, once the data was accessible and available, everybody just started spinning off, and all these maps and analysis quickly became available. I think that's kind of cool. So the cost for me and Mike to do this was, a few hours of sleep, because we stored it in Google Docs, we formatted it and did a bunch of joins with PostGIS, exporting GeoJSON with Postgres, visualization D3, TileMill was used in there a bit. We did it on GitHub. You could argue we use Mapbox, and there's a cost there. It's like $5, so okay, you got me there. I'll pay the $5. But it's kind of interesting because we were just kind of screwing around. But even more interesting than that is this was done back in February 2013, so some time ago. And if you asked me to replicate that process again, like if you said, all right, I've got the exact same thing, how you want to do it, I would probably attack it a totally different way. Just because in that 6 months, technology's changed a lot, and there's a lot of different ways to get at addressing the same problem. But you have to be aware of those, right? You have to think about those instead of just running off and doing the same dance you learned when you were in 6th grade. So hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. I'm going to leave you with this. This is stolen from GeoRube, who does spatial impressionisms. There's URL. The community can't just move mountains. They can alter the whole landscape. Bright minds working together change the game while others are still trying to figure out the rule book. And I think it's very true, is that the time we live in, just from a technology standpoint, is rapidly evolving, like at supersonic speed. And our customers, clients, my kids, will be your clients, are going to expect that rapid speed. They're going to want to see it. Or else they're going to ask us, what did you do with all that data, and why were you just drawing pretty lines on maps? So with that, hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. Here's my contact information. Look forward to hanging out with you the rest of the day, and y'all have a great conference.